All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the UEC. So, the Urban Ecology Collaborative comprises municipal officials, nonprofit organizations, and researchers, primarily in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. We meet on Zoom on the third Wednesday of each month from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., and we discuss issues related to urban ecology and urban forestry. So today we're really excited to discuss tree coalitions as they are manifested in multiple cities and regions. But before we get started in that conversation, I wanted to see if there are any community announcements, if anybody has something that's going on in your region or with your organization that you'd like to share out. I'm just going to give time for about 2 minutes for folks to just unmute and share. All right. I'm sure some announcements are going to come up. Oh, Chris, please tell us.
Hello, everybody. I'm figuring out how to put my hand back down. There we go. My name's Chris Teeter. I'm the Urban Forestry Partnership Coordinator in Connecticut. I really love these. I haven't been able to be on these calls very consistently, but I do like them when I have the chance to be on. Um, just something of note is we do have every state should have an urban forestry council, and the Connecticut Urban Forestry Council is going through a period of transition where the old bylaws, the old mission statement might not necessarily be reflective of where the newer members and other members of the organization want to go in the future. So we did put together a questionnaire and had quite a few responses from our council regarding, how that council wants to move forward. So I'd like to know if anybody else in the collective here has gone through a similar process with their urban forestry council or whatever it might be termed in their state. And would love to hear if anybody else has gone through a similar process and what the result has been and what kind of activities they do to help benefit urban trees in the state they're in. So just a little ask from anybody else that's on the call. I'll put my email in the chat. So if anybody wants to shoot me an email or anything afterwards, that'd be great. Thank you.
That's so exciting, Chris, in a time of renewal. And I'm sure there'll be lots of folks who have things to add. I know we're doing similar things in Pittsburgh as well. So we'll make sure to put that in the email as we respond back. And if folks have any resources or want to respond to Chris, please feel free to use the chat. And maybe if we have some time at the end of the call, we'll open that up as well. So thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Does anybody else want to share a quick announcement or just one more at least? All right. Um, uh, Thank you, William, for William's AI note taker. We appreciate you being here for folks who will need this. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start this discussion about urban tree coalitions. We have a couple of folks who are going to present, and I'm so excited to introduce Amara from Boston. She's going to share about the Boston Tree Alliance. So, Amara, please take us away.
Sounds good. All right, I'm just gonna share my screen now. Can you see this all right? Okay. Okay, so
Perfect.
Claire and Erica told me I only had one slide, so it's a lot of information on one thing. So hi everyone, my name is Amara Chittenden. I'm the program coordinator for the Boston Tree Alliance. I work for Mass Audubon out of Mattapan, which is a neighborhood in Boston. And I kind of just wanted to share out a little bit about the Boston Tree Alliance. I love talking about coalitions and the coalitions that have come before, what this one is, and I'm really hoping to just sort of have a really great discussion with everyone here who might be interested. So I'll kind of just introduce the Boston Tree Alliance by saying that Boston went through the process of developing our urban forest plan in 2022. And one of the findings out of that was that 60% of Boston's urban forest is on privately owned land. And from that, the city released a request for proposals to have an organization initiate a alliance that the city imagined would take on a lot of the issues that we're facing privately owned land specifically, while in conjunction working with the Urban Forest Division and the Parks and Rec team to tackle issues on public land. And so Mass Audubon was awarded the RFP last year. And so from that, currently our funding source is from the American Rescue Plan Act, $1 million. And we're awaiting our IRA funding still, which will be an additional 2.6 million from the city of Boston. So with this program, like I said, we're looking to build from the Boston's Urban Forest Plan, where they are trying to address multiple findings. The plan is centered around tree equity and looking at how different neighborhoods are impacted by tree canopy loss and trying to develop approaches to specific neighborhoods to address those problems. And this program, the city has a really big focus on, the benefits of trees, the public health impacts, and sort of reducing urban heat island impacts, which I would also, love to talk about in a future discussion. And so, like I said, the program currently could be extended through 2029 with this IRA funding. And Mass Audubon, we act as a fiscal administrator and a convener of the alliance. So one of the biggest goal of this whole program is actually for us to act as a sub-grantor. So we'll provide grants to community-based organizations and nonprofits who are working in neighborhoods where they have, deep connections with the communities in those neighborhoods to plant and care for trees. And like I said, with that specific focus on private land, which I think has been fairly unique in how I've talked to other folks in other coalitions. And I think that has its own set of unique challenges and interesting characteristics. So I think, this has been a really big part of our process, is just sort of co-developing with these nonprofits and other organizations a sort of granting process for how do we want to release this funding. We'll have funding through 2029 to release to organizations to do this work. Currently, we're limited to planting of trees and care of those trees for 2 years after they're planted. So we're trying to find other funding sources as well, because community members have been telling us that their interests lie outside of just that tree planting and care, and so we're trying to understand the best ways to do that. But a huge part of it is also community engagement and developing education and training opportunities for folks in Boston, whether they're a part of organizations or whether they're just individuals who want to learn more. And then also being really transparent about how we're tracking the survival of these trees and the maintenance efforts, the successes and challenges that organizations are facing with this. And so all to say, this past year, we're very new. We've just started. We had 5 grants so far that went out. And that included a food forest coalition, it included neighborhood development corporations, and also included a couple of organizations who are involved in tree planting already through one organization in East Boston and one organization that's closer to Mattapan, where I work. So there's an interesting range, and it sparked a lot of really great discussions around creative opportunities for us to think of where we can engage with folks about tree planting. But there's the biggest aspect, another big aspect of the coalition in our meetings as a larger body, and also with subgroups who are focused on specific topics. And so I'm happy to launch into all of that at another point, but that's kind of just a general summary. And I'm really interested in learning more about how other folks, what other coalitions look like. and that they might look something completely different. So I'll pass it on to Clara here. I think I have your slides up.
Yes, you do. Thank you. And I have so many questions about Boston. I'm sure many people will have uh, some as well. So in Pittsburgh, we have the Tree Canopy Alliance. And just on the slides, you can see that the Alliance is actually a working group of more than 20 nonprofits, organizations, and nonprofit organizations and government agencies across Allegheny County. And really, they're determined to increase equitable access to tree canopy and just making sure that there's, human health benefits spread across the region and that folks have the ability to get access to environmental and economic benefits that trees provide. So in this very small print, you can see who those alliance partners are. So everywhere from government agencies, we have folks like Student Conservation Association. We have actually universities. We have tree planting partners, workforce development folks, and even the city of Pittsburgh is included in here. We work very closely with the Forestry department at the city of Pittsburgh. And the Tree Canopy Alliance was this. The Pittsburgh Canopy Alliance was established to respond to one of our mayor's asks to plant about there was a huge planting goal. I'm not going to say the goal right here to say it wrong, but I think it's about 20,000 trees by 2030, but somebody needed to organize folks around how does this actually happen. So because this alliance was already in existence, we were able to take advantage of the IRA applications that were opened early in 2023. And about 8 groups from the alliance were part of this grant that granted $8 million from the U.S. Forest Service because we had already been organizing to do other tree canopy work in Allegheny County. This was just the ripe opportunity for us to do this. And in some of the goals that we have, if we go to the next slide with the alliance, I know I asked you to do one slide, and I did 2, so it's really great. But the goal, within at least IRA is to increase tree canopy and support resilience of the urban forest, really increase community level planning and do workforce development, as well as, tree care and maintenance with folks in the community. So because our alliance has multiple prongs, we're able to bring things like fruit tree plantings to communities or support in doing what we call relief neighborhood plans, where we're working on a neighborhood scale to really support residents and community development organizations and other government agencies to develop those smaller scale greening plans. And we can also do all the way up to technical support, including helping establish shade tree commissions or do street tree plantings. So the coalition kind of moves as these entities that are kind of tapping onto different aspects of the urban, the urban forest, but also responding to the needs of those municipalities. And as we know through the IRA, we're really focused on the Justice 40 and environmental justice tracts in our county, but the coalition is much wider than that. So we try to make sure this is equitably spread out, but we're not only focusing on IRA when you think about all the other 20 partners in the coalition. So there is a website that you can pull up, Pittsburgh Canopy Alliance, and we actually, when the IRA funding was launched, we did a tree planting to kick us all off in May of 2024. We have quarterly meetings, and then we also have subcommittees within the actual alliance. We have like a data committee, an outreach and communication committee, a project committee, an advocacy committee. So those committees meet on a monthly basis to kind of keep track of different metrics that will help out in reporting back to the feds with the IRA, but also just make sure we're keeping a pulse on all the other issues in the region. So that's a brief overview of ours in Pittsburgh. And I believe Erica has one that she would like to share with us from Philly. So please take this away.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Erica Smith-Fitchman. I'm the city forester here in Philadelphia. I have some folks on my team who are here. I want them to introduce themselves. Kate and Astrid, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, good morning. My name is Kate Illis. I'm the acting community forestry manager here at Tree Philly, the community forestry program at Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Astrid. I am the customer service and content manager here at Philadelphia Parks and Rec for Urban Forestry, and I am 3 months into this role.
Awesome. Just wanted to give you guys a sense for what we're doing. So we are definitely at a much earlier stage in our coalition building. Similar to Boston, we created a strategic plan, and then the Philly Tree Coalition is coming out of that effort. So we are using the IRA grant that we got, $12 million for the city of Philadelphia. That's stakeholders. That's a lowercase c city. So there's actually 6 partners you can see on our IRA grant. And one of the big things that we're doing with that is creating the Philly Tree Coalition. So we're pretty early stages. The things we know it will do are coordination between all of the disparate stakeholders. We have city agencies. I'm at Parks and Rec, but we also work very closely with the water department, the transportation authority, various groups. But we also have some incredible nonprofit partners like the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and Fairmount Park Conservancy, workforce development partners, state partners, federal partners. So one of the big things the coalition will be doing is coordinating activities. It will explicitly be focused on implementation of the Philly Tree Plan recommendations. So as opposed to some of the other groups where the coalition or the alliance itself, and Clara and Amara, please tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but my sense is that one of the things that your groups are doing are creating new programs to do tree planting. Maybe I'm wrong. We're trying to explicitly not do that. Clara is kind of like, maybe not so much. We want the entities that are part of the coalition to be the programmatic and operational partners, and the coalition itself to be coordinating additional fundraising for different groups, and then communicating as one entity about the Philly Tree Plan itself. The Parks Department led the creation of the plan, but we want the implementation of the plan to be more of like a third-party neutral kind of group. So that's where the Philly Tree Coalition will come into play. It will have paid staff, which the grant is allowing, and then PHS, one of our biggest nonprofits that does urban forestry work in the city, is going to house the coalition. So all of the HR and 501c3 status, et cetera, will be taken care of by PHS. And then the paid staff will operate within PHS, but they will be reporting to more of a steering committee kind of board, as opposed to having a direct supervisor within that entity. So we'll have a lot to work out. We have some good examples here in Philadelphia. We have the Neighborhood Garden Trust, which has a similar relationship with PHS. So we have kind of some examples to go off of, which is great. Again, we are in a very early stage, so I want to stop sharing this and then share one other extremely early concept of how this would be. Can you guys see this? Note the difference in numbers on this slide. It is, this was with the assumption that we would have that we were going for a $50 million Forest Service grant. So our numbers ended up being quite different from that. But you can kind of see, like, we were calling the Philly Tree Coalition at that point a project management organization, or Philly Tree Partners. And really we wanted to have an operational, like, staffing and administration role, marketing, outreach, potentially research and evaluation. We haven't really gotten there yet. And then we do have some money that will be re-granted to community-based organizations. We're not totally sure how that works yet either. So one of the things I love about the UEC is that it is a place to be very honest and share about the successes and challenges that you encounter. So I'm kind of showing you the, like, messy behind the scenes part of our process. The other thing that I don't have a good visual for is that we launched the Philly Tree Plan in February of 2023. So it's been about a year and a half since we did that. And we've been very focused on applying for, receiving, rebudgeting, figuring out how to communicate about the big IRA grant. And so we've been quite quiet in that time. And so all of the stakeholders who were really integral to creating the Philly Tree Plan have kind of not heard from us in about a year and a half. And so we have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but it is not well documented and it hasn't been very transparent. So I'm very grateful to Astrid. When she joined our team, you know, her job is to translate what we do to the public in many ways, whether to individual residents or, you know, to groups of residents and stakeholders. And she very quickly identified that there wasn't much for her to go on to communicate about what we're doing. And so that was extremely helpful feedback. So we are moving ahead with our creating the Philly Tree Plan, but we're using a facilitated process where we're going to re-engage some of the stakeholder groups that were part of the Philly Tree Plan to do a collaborative effort to figure out what the governance of this entity will be, and to hire a director with some information about, like, what it is they're actually going to be doing in the coalition. So that's exciting. It of course adds more time to the launching of this effort, and people have various opinions about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So we're, you know, in the amongst stakeholders, how quickly do we need to hire this person so that we have more capacity, versus when we hire this person, we want them to be set up for success, and what does that mean? So I'm happy to talk through any of those things with this group. It's like a small but mighty group today. And also to let Kate or Astrid give their perspective on the Philly Tree Coalition and what, you know, how we've been thinking through some of this. And I do want to say thank you to Amara and Boston, because we've had a couple of great conversations. Also, the Cleveland Tree Coalition has been really helpful. Samira Malone, who's no longer there, but was at the time we had a conversation, was so open about what they did and sharing all of their governance and their struggles and their successes. And then there's also the Chicago Regional, it's the Chicago Regional Tree Alliance, right?
Initiative.
Initiative.
Yeah.
So those are the groups that we've kind of been talking to try to get some examples for what we want to be doing in Philly.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
If anyone from
If Kate
Philly
or Astrid have anything, they want to say.
I appreciate the opportunity, Erica. You really went through, I think, in really like honest transparency about how the process we've been going through to work this out. And I'm really excited that the next steps are this like community re-engagement and bringing in the stakeholders, because when we're doing this sort of like in the weeds, operational, working out the details, we needed to like remember what made the tree plan successful and all of the successes that have come from like that process. And so much of that are these amazing stakeholder groups. And like Erica said, like all of it takes more time, but we're moving at that pace so that we can continue to build trust with these like community-based organizations, these like really people like, you know, who work really closely and directly and not from a governmental perspective. So I'm really excited about the next steps that we're working out. And I feel like really hopeful against all odds, seemingly. It's going to be the Parks and Rec motto over here, but I'm feeling really hopeful and excited about what's coming up next. And I really appreciated this talk because I think a lot of us are in that like growth phase, trying to work out and work like, you know, identify points of communication and collaboration that's so necessary when we receive this historic funding, but also focusing on like celebration too. That this is a huge like investment in our work, and like continuing to touch base in this way honestly and transparently is really cool. I appreciate you having us. Thank you.
The only thing that I would add is that one of my excitement about my role is being involved in the tree plan because I thought it was so great. I have a love for trees in general. And so I thought being in Philadelphia and already having people think that I'm like a little weirdo because I take them to parks when they visit, um, when they would visit me. To see the tree plan be something that was so expansive and had did so much research when I came on board, it was one of those things to find that the silence had happened. And I thought that the community was such a big part. And that's the only thing that I would advocate to any other people building coalitions is that your community are the people, they need your trust, right? We have so many things that we're up against as a community that's already underserved. You know, we have green gentrification that happens. And so building trust with your coalition and transparency is just one of the bigger things that I see that is a big part of creating the the goals that we want to have be fulfilled.
You hit the nail right on the head. And I agree deeply about the trust building. And that's why IRA is so interesting because it really asks you, how are you engaging community? Like, how are they being part of this process? So thank you, Philly team, for sharing so openly. And hopefully throughout our second part of the dialogue, people can share out some helpful pieces. But I know Ashley in the chat wanted to share about the Boston Wilderness Coalition. Is that true, Ashley? Did I read that correctly?
Greater Baltimore Wilderness Coalition.
Baltimore. Yes, greater Baltimore. Please go ahead and share whatever pieces you wanted to add before we go into the second part. Yeah.
Sure. It was just in response to a few folks talking about workforce development. We're a coalition of partners focused on, let's just say, rewilding Central Maryland. And a lot of that is trees. Maryland recently started their 5 million tree initiative. So we are building out using a coalition model, a network of green workforce development partners, either those who are pre-existing or those who are interested in this. And so similar to this, you know, we come together on a regular basis, talk about what's working, what's not working. We share curriculum, we co-develop curriculum, we share lists of potential employers. We try to build that list of employers and have them to be active participants in all of this. Because we know no workforce development program can be really successful unless you've got employers waiting at the tail end of it. It's been really successful. We're working with young adults primarily. We also got modest compared to the success you guys have had. We got $2 million through the IRA funds to continue to grow this effort. And we're specifically trying to target hiring from traditionally underserved communities and doing the work in those same communities so our young adults can really appreciate the impact of the work that they're doing, realizing it's not just in state parks or, you know, or maybe some of our larger federal parks, all super valuable as well, but they can really immediately see it and appreciate it. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that. Check out our website. We've got five hubs right now, several in Baltimore, but also in the larger area. And yeah, it's a heck of a lot of fun. Happy to share anything we've learned with anyone who's curious.
Thank you so much, Ashley. If you have a link to like a website or something, I think we could
Absolutely.
always share it out to folks. And um, we are going to go into a little bit of a kind of Jamboard, whiteboard kind of discussion to one, get some feedback in terms, and Amar is going to lead us through that exercise. So we encourage your participation. To some of the questions will be asked. You can answer them by just unmuting yourself and speaking, putting it in the chat, or just using the sticky note. But we know tree coalitions or alliances, they're very complicated. They're very contextual sometimes and depends on the city. I'll add, Erica, that, we're not necessarily creating new programs as much as these organizations already have existing programs, and we're trying to feed into what municipalities may need or have capacity for. If it's tree planting, we have a partner to activate. If it's school plantings, school plantings is not part of this, or if it's shade tree commissions, we have a partner that can support. So some of these municipalities just don't have the capacity to do some of these things, but we're not necessarily creating new programs, but those programs already exist and they're feeding into needs. But I don't think that came out very clearly as I was describing.
That's really helpful because, I think one of the biggest differences is that we are focused on a single municipality that is also contiguous with the county. So the governance, like the actual municipality, is extremely straightforward in its own way. It is very complicated, but in that it's not dealing with like county governance and additional municipalities, it's very straightforward. So what you're saying is that you guys are trying to connect resources with, even smaller cities that don't have those things. Got it.
Yes. It's perfect. So Amara, do you want to take us through what we're about to do next? And yeah, please, everybody be comfortable to be yourselves and share openly when these questions come up. So thanks, Amara.
Yeah, sure. So if anyone's used Jamboard before, I think we have in this group before, that has gone away. So now we're using Canva. There's something called Whiteboard in Canva, and we just kind of wanted to have and sort of take this as like sort of one step in starting a discussion about like how can like we as coalitions, people as part of coalitions, like just really start to connect with one another more about, like Erica was saying, like talking about and being transparent about like what's worked well, what's been challenging, especially as we're seeing like a lot of this, really expand and grow with new funding. And so I just wanted to sort of share a whiteboard that sort of touches on a few different questions. And to sort of just kick it off, let me share this really quick. Can you see my screen here? Okay, cool.
Yes.
So yeah, like I said, this is a Canva whiteboard, so it's a little different. If you press the S button on your computer, that will create a sticky note. So if you're interested in sort of like adding more notes to this board, then you can. But I liked that we started this call by also talking about like in Connecticut, the Urban Forestry Council that was mentioned, and other sort of ways that folks are seeing coalitions or groups coming together. Because I think when we were creating this, we were kind of like, well, what actually is an urban forest coalition? What constitutes that? Like when we were looking at all of these cities and all these sort of examples, we were thinking, well, this definitely isn't, every single coalition of urban forestry practitioners, or, sort of what makes up an urban forest alliance or coalition. And so that was something that we were kind of like curious to know if folks had other examples of those in their region or in their area. I know that in Boston, like we've had a program that came before us in the early 2000s, the Grow Boston Greener campaign. And we have sort of a Boston Urban Forest Friends group, which is a lot more which focuses a lot more on advocacy and other pieces of sort of urban forestry that our coalition doesn't interface with directly, especially because we work with the city of Boston. So I'm just curious if anyone has any sort of thoughts on that question, or if there are ways that that's come up in your area. That would be interesting to know about.
Hey, Amara, I would say if you make your screen much larger and if you can create a couple of like sticky notes to just kind of put in the question, that may help some folks with navigation, I think. Like that, you already had the four, but I kind of just filled one out already, but I think that may be helpful to guide the conversation.
Yeah, I'll put more in there. And similarly, like not to like completely move on from that piece, but the question to the side of it was, who should urban forest coalitions work with or involve to get things done? So I think we've heard a lot of sort of different like municipal agencies, different departments within government systems versus different nonprofits. Also hearing about the importance of community members and residents, and sort of making sure that certain stakeholders are involved in coalitions, I think is something that we've been thinking about a lot in Boston, of just sort of the original sort of idea behind our grant was that we would involve really much smaller community-based organizations and nonprofits in thinking about Boston's urban forests. So, but many folks, have never been invited into that conversation in the city. And as was mentioned, there's a lot of sort of trust building and building relationships that I think takes a lot of time. And yeah, just sort of curious if anyone has thoughts about who should be involved in order to get things done, and sort of like when there's a plan, like a big urban forest plan, how can you have action after that plan? What entities need to be involved to make that action sort of happen, I guess. Yeah, those were just some thoughts, but nothing too big.
Also, if you just want to answer the question by literally unmuting yourself and giving some comments, that's fine too. Or if you want to put things in the chat, that's also okay. I see the board online writing about the folks that should be involved in the Urban Coalition's work, talking about urban gardens, faith-based partners, friends of park groups, community development corporations, non-traditional urban forestry partners. Those are all really great. So Boar, you know yourself. If you feel inclined to expand a little bit on any of those groups and why you think it may be important to include them.
Did you guess it was me? Surprise, Boar.
No, I did not actually. Yeah, please share, Becky. We love to hear from you always at all times. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I was just wanting to hear from other folks as well. So happy to post this in the chat. I wrote a really long one in the green box. The links don't really show up great on post-it notes, so I'll put them in the chat as well. So for background, American Forest supports two specific coalitions. One is the Washington State Tree Equity Collaborative that started last year with an agreement with the Washington State Department of Natural Resources. And the second one has been going on, I think, since 2020. The Phoenix Urban Forestry Coalition and American Forests I don't know if they joined in 2020, but we definitely have a more active role, at least in the past 2 years. So again, happy to chat about those offline, how they work, how they don't, connect you with my coworker Tanner. He oversees kind of both of those coalitions. We have a stronger hand in the Washington State Tree Equity Collaborative. The Phoenix Urban Roundtable, we just support leading some of their committees. And then in terms of the second question, so again, full transparency, I don't oversee this, but we are an IRA funder. We are a subgrantor, and so as part of our funding, it's to basically kind of help organizations, kind of similar to what Clara was talking about, cities, municipalities, towns that lack capacity, are maybe newer to urban forestry, or the people overseeing urban forestry don't have an urban forestry background. There's each of our 36 recipients is a different story. So as part of that, we're just providing technical assistance. And so this is kind of what we work towards in terms of, doesn't have to be a coalition, but working with them to maybe think outside of their original proposal to the funding, the Forest Service funding, and think about who they can engage, who they haven't engaged yet. I know Clara was part of that with our coaching network, and same with Erica, helping kind of people think about that in a newer, different way, or just encouraging them to go down maybe a path that they're already working on. I wasn't like super a part of that, but that was a lot. I'll stop.
No, that's great. And it makes me think about some of the things you said, and others, please feel free to chime in. Specifically, when I saw the faith-based partners, it made me think about something we're trying to do actively in with our funding of the coalition here. They're folks in a coalition that are focused on outreach, and I'm one of those folks. And part of what we're trying to do is do like a faith-based summit where we're pulling together faith leaders from different congregations across Allegheny County, and we're really trying to partner with other entities that are not necessarily dealing with the tree technical side, but they have a language of speaking about climate change and trees in a way that will be received by the faith-based community that they are servicing. So part of what we're doing is trying to bring that technical assistance and support to faith organizations by, hosting a summit, bringing folks together, giving some case studies, and helping them think through, okay, how could you activate certain type of, forestry projects within your congregation in your area. So as you're talking about this technical assistance, Becky, is reminding me of that. And it's something that we're also trying to do with the municipalities that may not have resources. Some of our partners do what they call councils of government, where they call these multiple municipalities together to go jointly for funding projects. And so the alliance is kind of bringing in some, education and exposure to these municipalities for what they could be doing. And if they don't have resources, having them join or join a council of government cohort that can help leverage additional funding sources, but also bring, things that maybe a small municipality may not be able to do. So I think what we're doing is very similar to, yes, what you just said, although I think yours is on a much higher level. I believe, Becky, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I also want to share, sorry about my background. I switched photos with a coworker that's also named Becky for a staff meeting. So that was her and her father when she was a kid. That was not me. And speaking of faith-based partners and the need for funding, I will post this in the chat. You're welcome to send it over email. Yesterday, we released a request for proposals for faith-based partners, or like you said, a coalition, or however you're working with people. There's an info session on October 1st. But that is through a separate part of our IRA funding was to faith-based communities. So I'll post that now. Feel free to share.
Thank you. Are you seeing anything else pop up in the document?
I think that's great. And we had a few questions, but I guess the other ones that we wanted to talk about more broadly, which I think have been touched upon in this, are like I was saying, like the successes and the challenges, and sort of like looking at what's been really successful for folks who are part of these urban forest coalitions, in terms of governance, in terms of communication or outreach, the challenges, and like Clara was saying, that they can be unique depending on the context for where they are in and how they've been set up. And it's really interesting how uniquely different coalitions have been sort of organized. But yeah, these questions of just sort of what makes them successful, and challenges. So I don't know if anyone has sort of thoughts around those things.
This is Ashley. Canva is thwarting me.
Oh no, I'm sorry about that.
Professional Luddite. So I'll just speak. Maybe not specific to urban forest coalitions, but coalitions in general. A book that I found super helpful for the Greater Baltimore Wilderness Coalition was Impact Networks, and Connecting to Change the World. Just this really hammering home the essentials of effective coalition work. That it's not about any one organization's goals. It's about the shared North Star goal of reforesting a certain area. So putting egos aside, it's, what do they say? It's in Impact Network. It's not egocentric. It's ecocentric. Really focusing on deep listening, frequent communication, right? Making sure we're not crawling back into our silos, but we're all communicating with each other on a really regular basis. And then this is a personal one that's really worked well for me. Keep it fun. Yeah, we have so many demands on our time. We're all exhausted. Another meeting just is not all that exciting. But if you can really keep it fun and make it much more relational, maybe than just task driven, I found that really helps to keep people coming back to those meetings. And the other one is encouraging people to really think big. I found a real hunger for that. And so when they come together, be like, no, we're not just like any one individual organization. We're this meta organism that can allow ourselves to really think at a bold level. It's fun. It's a fun exercise for sure.
Thank you, Ashley. Erica, your hand is raised. Here,
Yeah.
you say in the chat.
Yeah, well, that is to eco, not ego. I find that can really sink you. We're having possibly some issues with the ego in ours right now. Just to be transparent, it can be very annoying when people are trying to take more credit than they should be taking. Astrid knows what I'm talking about. I also wanted to, I mean, I think everything Ashley said was accurate. We have an amazing person here in Philly who is part of like our community garden world, Sally McCabe, who always says, why have a meeting if you can have a party? Which is like really something that we will sometimes come back to kind of remind ourselves that it does need to be fun. I think, and Becky says, I miss Sally. Yeah, she's the best. And it's hard, especially over Zoom, to generate energy sometimes. So we're talking about how to like get some energy back into these efforts now that the money is here and we're like moving ahead. I think in person is going to be a portion of that. And yeah, I mean, I just generally think that the challenges with coalitions that we've had here in Philly in the past, or like we haven't tried to create a coalition necessarily, but like a joint effort. In the past, it hasn't really worked, in part because the focus was more on who's getting credit for various things and how are we counting trees. And we're really trying to get away from that with our coalition and make it focused on something that's much larger and more nuanced. It's really hard to communicate about something that's as large and nuanced as the Philly Tree Plan. But I think that it's extremely important to try. So we are trying to do that and trying as much as possible to take the emphasis away from number of trees planted or even canopy percent, and really talk about like having healthy systems, investing in the communities through jobs and through planting of trees. And now I'm just starting to proselytize about the Philly Tree Plan itself and not about the coalition, but like I do think that they're related, and coalition building is a messy process. So I appreciate everyone's being willing to share. And I look forward to poking people as we move forward to kind of like get some advice on certain things too.
Becky's hand is raised. Thank you, Erica, for sharing that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to share for folks is that way back like 10 years ago, Erica was like literally trying to do what she has done. I know you've had fits and starts, but congratulations. I just wanted to recognize that. Like, so it sometimes takes a long time for this to get going and get going. So hooray.
Becky was a part of it, and I think a crucial part of it, one of the very first Tree Philly Community Forestry team members in 2012?
Yeah.
2013?
2013 to 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been like an amazing coalition of people who, you know, are part of this world, which is amazing.
Yes. This is great. Congratulations all around. And Astrid's hand's raised. So Astrid, please, if you
I just wanted to add, because Becky just said, I don't remember. I'm like on two different screens right now. But just said that it took 10 years. And so one of the things that I came across, I don't really know what it is to build a coalition successfully, because I've never actually been a part of building a coalition. But I will say that patience, because what I found when I came into working with the Philly Tree Plan was that they were running fast. It's okay. The governance, we don't have it complete, but we're jumping to get the executive director and we're jumping to get this. And it's kind of like, because you're jumping, you're missing steps, right? And you don't get a chance to kind of live a little in the place that you are. That way you can kind of check your blind spots, to me, in my experience. And so that's the only thing that I would offer, is that be clear that, running because, okay, now the money is here, or jumping because, one thing is happening after another, doesn't mean that you need to run too. That's my only offer, is that have some patience. If this can be a 10-year long wait to get to this point, how long would it actually take to have a successful coalition? Or find that your coalition is successful.
I agree. Yes, Astrid, bringing all the energies. I think it's so true. And also sometimes there is like, yes, a funding pressure, and it may be difficult if organizations are not thinking about building relationships along the way for when the funding is available. But also you may need to have funding to pay a person to build a relationship. So it's almost like you're always chasing this thing, but what you're sharing, your points are so well taken, in that we are here for the long run, and to do something that's really successful, it needs some deep thought and process. Yes, and keeping things fun. I wanted to play I wanted to play Glee, but maybe I won't for the sake of not being kicked out of the UEC leadership. But if you get a chance, just don't stop believing that we can hold into this, we can do the things that we're trying to do, as hard as they may be. We have 10:57. Amara, I don't know if you have any additional pieces you want to just kind of bring out that are on the board that maybe we haven't talked about, that we can probably start wrapping it up here soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think those things that folks have been touching on are really great. And I would just definitely agree. I think the challenge for us has been that there are expectations with our city partner of sort of in terms of numbers and in terms of, I mean, as much as they are on board with sort of thinking about like, more holistically, like what are we trying to do with in terms of education and engagement? Like I think timeline has just been the one of the hardest challenges for us. Um, and yeah, and I'm curious to talk more with the Philly team about like re-engaging with folks, because we weren't involved with the creation of the Boston Urban Forest Plan, but I think it's been, folks get asked to be involved in things and then they get shut out from other things and then they get re-asked. And, I think that those gaps just create a lot of like, that why should there be trust after that happens? And sort of like with the action that's happening after those plans are created, like how, how are the actions, all that community input and all that, those things that you asked for, how are you actually implementing those things later on, I think is a big piece of like what we're trying to focus on. But yeah, I'd love to just continue these conversations more. I had another piece there at the end, which I don't think we have time for, but just thinking more about how can coalitions work together and as a whole. And I see that folks started to fill those out. And yeah, I think just, how can we all continue to talk and have these conversations? And maybe it's something we can all revisit once these things have, people who are newer to this or folks who have been, can we revisit this conversation in 6 months or something and just continue to talk? That would be great for me too. But yeah, Claire, I don't know if you had anything else, but
No, I don't. And we do have to end this call right now because my colleague wants to start his. But we're going to send the link so maybe folks can continue to fill it out, Amara, if they do, if they have that. And thank you for joining once again. We're so excited every time you come. We look forward to seeing you next time. And please enjoy planting season, stay hydrated, and take your time to build these great relationships. Thank you. Bye-bye.